Hello, I'm Annie Davey. I've been telling Bible stories to children for many years, and I've got some lovely ones to tell you from the New Testament in this section here. If you want to know about the background, where I got some of the background detail from, you can look it up on the web on truthortradition.com or www.korky.info, where we've written a book called Jesus, Faith and Fact. So it's all in there somewhere, but there's some interesting things here which you may not know. You may think you do know the stories, but wait and see. So let's see what we've got. Hello, I've got a question for you this morning. Let's see what that question is, shall we? Shall we read it together? What makes you happy? What makes you happy? Bet there are lots of answers you could give. And some people would say, well, I'd really be happy if I were, this word here, if I were rich, if I won the lottery, all the things I could do and the things I could buy. It would be really wonderful, then I'd be really happy. And there was a man that Jesus talked about. Let's draw him in, shall we? Give him his hat. He would have had a beard and a moustache, I expect, because most of them did in Jesus' time. He was really happy because he'd had such a good harvest. They'd had just the right amount of rain, just the right amount of sun, and the fields were absolutely full of grain. So he set his workers to work at harvest time to bring it all in. Let's see, he had lots of helpers because it was such a lot of work to bring it all in. So here are all his workers. Where have they got to? And they'd all be beavering away, cutting it all by hand, stacking it all up, leaving it to dry, bundling it onto the carts, bringing it back home and putting it into the barn. And very soon, this man here realised that he was going to be not just rich, but very rich. In fact, the barn wasn't nearly big enough, so he had it torn down and built bigger ones. In fact, he had to build 2 more barns to take it all. There's so much stuff. And there's the other one. And then yet another one. And before many days were gone by, he had 3 barns absolutely stuffed with grain. But he wasn't a man with much imagination. And he didn't think to himself, well, it would be rather nice to give a party for my workers or something, or there must be some poor men among them that could do with a bit of help. He didn't think that at all. He just thought, mine, all mine. I'm a very clever man. He was very very selfish. And he said, I can sit back now. No need to do any more work at all. No. I'm really made now. Fantastic. And God said to him that night, you are a fool. Because this night, your life is going to be taken away. You're going to die. And then what good are barns full of stuff going to be to you then? Well, that must have been a horrible shock, mustn't it? We're not told what happened to him. But God said it was going to happen, it will have happened. And Jesus wanted to point out to people that, well, what he said was, written down in the book of Acts actually, that what would make us happy is giving not constantly wanting more and more and more, but keeping our eyes open, keeping our ears open. Who needs a bit of help? Who can we look after? Who's at our gate? Who needs some help? We can think of lots of people, can't we, if we really think about it, who could do with some help. And it brought to mind this old friend of mine. She was a lady that I used to help look after, and she lived into her 90s, and her name was Nilda. And Nelda was a German girl at the beginning of World War II. I expect some of you have been learning about that. And she lived in Germany, and she thought, I don't like the way things are going over here. I'm going to go to England. I'll be all right there. They won't be fighting with like Nazis and things. So she came to England and she got a job as a helper in somebody's house, a servant girl. And she was working for a doctor and his family. And the doctor decided to move to Kenya in Africa, because he thought he could do a lot of good there. And so Nelda went with the family to help look after the children and help with the housework and the cooking. And there she met and married a lovely man, and they had 2 children. But at the time, there was a big uprising of unhappy people who were called the Mau Mau, and they were stirred up by the local chiefs to cause problems and trouble. And Nelda's husband was killed by the Mau Mau. And so here she was with 2 young children, and she couldn't work for the doctor anymore. She came back to London, and there she found some friends who helped her put the children through school and to get by. Well, Nelda was not somebody who was trying to collect stuff for herself. Nelda had noticed when she was in Kenya that people didn't like to have children who were deaf, children whose ears didn't work very well, because they made funny noises and they couldn't learn to speak like other people. They simply couldn't hear. And in those days, which is what, over 70 years ago, there wasn't the help for people who couldn't hear like there is nowadays. So Nelda decided she was going to do something about it. She couldn't bear to see little children put on the rubbish dump or left to scrounge for themselves because they couldn't speak. So she began to save up her money. And every penny she had, she would put towards something which is now called Lambwe Christian School for Deaf Children. She found a lovely African man who had the same vision. And between them, they got together and they've started this school, and they collected all the children they could find who needed help with their ears, with hearing. And they started this school. Originally it was just a small shack by the lake. Then it grew and grew and grew. Now it's quite a big school with, I think, over 150 children in it. So exciting what she did. And when she could no longer work in Kenya, she came back to live in London. And there she would water down her fairy liquid and just use a little drop in the washing up. And she wouldn't waste anything. She turned off the lights. She ate very little. Every spare penny she had, she put towards helping the children at this school in Africa. Because she had this word here. She had there's an M there. She had compassion on them. Compassion comes from a Latin word. It means a fellow feeling for people, a really understanding of how people are feeling. And she knew that they were feeling left out and they had no hope and no future. But because she worked so hard, everything she had, she gave towards looking after the children. Suddenly, this whole group of children had a future and a hope. They began to learn to speak with finger spelling or with lip reading. And even some of them discovered that they could use their voices and learn to speak. It's so exciting what she did. One old lady. She wasn't going to be rich and selfish. She wasn't foolish. She knew what really mattered. And God helped her all the time. She was very much aware of God's presence with her. So I'm going to pray that what makes you happy will not be the getting, but will be the giving. So when you get something, think how you can share it. One Bible principle was tithing. That means giving away 1/10 of what you have. We can't always do that. We haven't always really got a lot of money, but we can try, can't we? So if we get £10, you could give £1 away. It's not very much, is it? But it's a principle which is really good. If we get given a lot of things, to give some of it away to help other people. So we can do that with the food bank or the home bank. All sorts of people we could give to help. Homeless people need somewhere, don't they? We can give some money towards a cafe or something that's helping homeless people. If you think about it and ask God to show you where he would like you to help or whom he would like you to help, he'll show you, he'll give you an idea and I know. Even if it's just visiting an old person who's a bit lonely, there are all sorts of ways we can give time or money, all sorts of things you might have, bits of things that you've done, a nice card or something. I'm sure that God will give you good ideas on how to help people and not to be selfish and to think about giving, not getting. So I pray that you'll have a good think about that and see what ideas God gives you. Be quite exciting, wouldn't it? So God bless you. Thank you for listening.